All right, hello everyone. We are going to get started if you want to find your seats. Thank you very much. Awesome. Well, a very warm welcome to everyone to our first Theology on Tap of the semester. If this is your first time at the Newman Center, a special welcome to you. We're so glad that you joined us. Just a couple of practicals if you're coming in a little later. We have desserts in the back. The bar remains open. There's like a caramel apple bar going on back there. Caramel's been cooked in the crock pot. Delicious. Please enjoy. And then restrooms are down the hall to your left. So yeah, feel free to kind of move about, but we'll be settling in for our speaker tonight. We're so overjoyed to welcome Nicole Tittmann to join us tonight. Some things I learned about Nicole during dinner. She used to be a Montessori teacher, was a personal stylist as well, so we can see her for some tips, and also a karaoke extraordinaire. So we'll have to pull her out for the next open mic night. It got pretty wild. But Nicole is right now an executive coach with Soul Recruiting Company. She works with executives, young professionals, and students to help them craft really a vision for their life and their work. She has a master's in education and resides in Southern California with her husband and 6 children. And she'll be sharing with us tonight about really how she moved. She shared with us that she moved from being a radical feminist to a homeschooling mom, and just kind of that journey of over these years of marriage, what would she do differently looking back, or what's some advice that she'd give to young adults like us, kind of in retrospect. So we hope that you can really soak in her talk, and we'll be having a Q&A afterwards. So just be thinking about anything else you'd like to hear from Nicole. All right, let's give her a warm welcome.
Okay, we'll get this on here first. Can you hear me okay with this? Is that okay? Okay, great. Okay, so first I want to just tell a little story about that kind of explains why I'm giving this talk. About a month ago, I was at Williams-Sonoma with my teenage son. And we just moved into this new house, and it's one of those, I'm not sure what exactly it's called, but it's one of those stoves where it doesn't work with just your regular pots and pans, so we had to get a whole new set. So we're looking for a big pan, and I kept telling the lady, I need something big, because I've got a lot of kids, so I need something that I can cook one big meal for my whole family in this one big pan. And she kept showing me these pans. I was like, it's not big enough, it's not big enough, I've got a lot of kids. And then finally my son said to me, you know, Mom, a lot of us don't live at home anymore. You don't really have that many people to cook for anymore. And so I got kind of sad, and I was thinking and then she and I were sort of commiserating, and I always like to sort of be aware of wherever I have an opportunity for apostolate. So I was, chatting with this woman, telling her, yeah, it's really a shame when your kids leave and stuff. And anyways, and so then we were chatting a little bit more, and she was checking me out. We finally found something that was going to work for our family. And she was checking me out, and she asked me, so how many kids do you have? And I always get a little when I have to answer that question, because you never know out in the world how that number is going to get, the reaction you're going to get. And so I just told her I have 6 children. And she made a look of disgust on her face that was similar to if I had just given her some cat feces instead of my credit card. And she said, ugh, why would you do something like that? And I said, this is really embarrassing because there's a priest in the room. And I said, well, I guess I just really liked my husband. And she held that look of disgust on her face a little bit longer. And then she said, oh, I get it. And she started to laugh. And then we continued to have this nice, it was very much an icebreaker. We had this nice conversation. She talked a little bit about her family and her experience. And I felt really good. I thought, awesome. I made this connection. I was this positive example for this woman. And I'm feeling really good about myself. And I turn around to go and I look at my son. And he has that same cat feces look on his face. He's 18 years old. And he just said, Mom, that was so gross. So I use that as sort of an example of, even when we think we're doing a really great job, I'm not standing here as any kind of June Cleaver, perfect expert on raising a family in the middle of the world today. I've made a lot of mistakes. As this lovely lady introduced me, I was the one, when I was in high school, I was the one who made the speech, how dare you try and tell me what to do with my body, to my confirmation class before I did the mic drop and walked out of my confirmation class. I was also the rad trad mom who had her daughters wearing matching chapel veils for the Sunday Tridentine Mass. Both are positions that I no longer identify with. But I am a big believer in Aristotle's philosophy that virtue is the mean that lies somewhere between the extremes. So if that's true, then I'm here today, in hopefully a relatively entertaining way, to give you my top 10 things that I would and would not do again as a single person and as a married person. Okay, so first, for the singles, number 1, trust your gut. If you have a bad feeling about the person that you're currently dating, there's a reason for that, and trust them. We had a guy from the CIA come to our house. We had this weird connection, and he came to our house and he said, when you feel like you're in a situation of danger, you probably are. Trust that and go with your instincts. And I think the same thing is true when you're dating. One of my first dating experiences was this guy. Every time we stopped at a stop sign or a stoplight, he would tilt the rear view mirror down and do this with his hair. And it was never like fix his hair, it was always just like this with his hair. And it was to the point where one day I thought it would be really funny, and I got all my girlfriends to like say something to him about his hair. I thought it would be this really funny thing, and he would kind of like be aware that this is sort of a funny thing. And at the end of the day, he never picked up on the joke. He never like got a sense that something weird was going on. So at the end of the day, I said, hey, I'm sorry, I got to tell you the truth. I told all my friends to do this. I thought it would be sort of funny. And he said, oh my gosh, that was so sweet. And I realized, oh geez, we were really, really not on the same page. And I dated that guy for 2 years. I ignored my instinct. And then he dumped me for someone better looking. So yeah, that instinct that he was kind of a superficial guy, absolutely 100% true. And I would have saved myself a lot of time and energy if I had listened to that little voice when we first started dating. Okay, so number 2, date with a purpose. Have a clear idea of what you are looking for, and then check that list again. So in coaching, one of the things that we talk about a lot is establishing a vision, getting really clear about what the vision is, and then working towards that vision. So again, I'll use myself as an example. When I was in high school, my vision of what I wanted in a boyfriend was someone really good looking and someone who was really rich. And I dated that guy, and I never missed conversation as much as I did when I was dating that guy. A few years later, when I went off to college, I had a really amazing conversion experience. I went to a school that some of you may have heard of called Thomas Aquinas College. And there I realized, like, okay, I've got to reevaluate what I'm looking for in a guy that I'm dating. So I wanted someone now who was smart and and funny. And I met a guy who was really, really smart, but he was pretty sarcastic. So he was funny, but he wasn't kind. He was kind of more the biting, not really nice kind of humor. And it was, a good lesson. Again, like you need to start you get more and more clear about what you're looking for, the more you start to get really clear about what it is that is your vision. And eventually I realized that what I was really looking for was someone who, it didn't have to be the best looking guy in the room. I wanted someone I was attracted to, but someone who I was attracted to inside and out. I wanted somebody who was a man of faith. I wanted somebody who was kind, someone who was smart enough that I could respect him, but kind enough that he would also respect and listen to me. Someone who was funny, and at least he could laugh at my jokes. And someone who, anyways, was true. All those things were true, and most of all, that he was my best friend. And thankfully, God heard that prayer as well, and he answered it. And we are married today, 27 years. Number 3, be the anti-Olivia Newton-John. Do not get physical. So this is one of the most important decisions that you'll ever make in your life. And you want to make sure that you have a really clear head about this. So interestingly, they have found that in your brain, there are more areas of your brain that are dedicated to desire than to actually liking the thing that you have. And the areas of your brain where actually the liking and the desire are both coming from that part of your brain, the part that is dedicated to desire, more synapses, 10 times the amount of synapses are going for desire than they are for actually liking that thing. And I think we've all experienced that, right? When you're on a diet or you're trying not to buy this thing that you really, really want, you can come up with all kinds of reasons why this thing actually makes sense. So if at all possible, if we have learned anything from Bill Clinton, it's that desire messes up your ability to make a wise decision. Am I right? So seriously, you wouldn't choose a career when you were drunk. Do yourself and your future children a favor, and just say no. Number 4, sorry?
I said that works too.
Oh yeah. Number 4, don't get more serious than the situation warrants. I was a serial monogamist for most of my single life. I would go from relationship to relationship. And it finally got to a point where I felt like I was just saying, is this the one? Is this the one? Is this the one? Is this the one? And it got really exhausting. Finally, by the time I did meet my now husband, I felt really frustrated. I knew that I was really good at being a girlfriend, but I wasn't really figuring out how to get to that next spot in my life where I really wanted to be, which was married. And so I had an amazing spiritual director at the time. And my spiritual director said to me, you don't get serious with someone unless you're both pretty sure that you want to get married to each other. Otherwise, you're not really in a serious relationship. And so I said, okay, Father, I appreciate that, but what do I say to the guy that I'm currently dating? And he said, well, you just tell him he's your special friend. And that went over so well. He really loved that. But in all honesty, it made our relationship, it made the intention of our relationship a lot more clear. He knew exactly why I was there, and we were not going to be serious with each other. We were going to be more of just good friends, unless we found that there was a situation where we felt like we really, really wanted this to be something more serious, where we could say we were more likely than not that we would probably want to get married to each other. And he's very much of a literal guy, so he would say things like we'd have a really good date, and he would say, man, I think I'm at 47% right now. That's great. And another time he came to visit, and he thought it was really funny because he was living in South Bend and I was living in DC. And another time he came to visit, and I had the stomach flu, so I was not looking my best, and he said, wow, I think I'm more like 43% right about now, which was really hilarious. But it was on our mind, and it gave our relationship a lot of clarity and a good direction, I think. Okay, so number 5, say your prayers. And make sure that he or she are also saying their prayers. I met a guy once at Mass. When I first moved to DC, I met this guy at Sunday Mass. And we went out for brunch and coffee a couple of times, and I told him that I went to daily Mass. He asked if I was going to be a nun. I realized we were probably not exactly on the same page, and I listened to my rule number 1 at that point. So I said, trusted my gut, and I said, I think we'll be good friends, but I don't really think this is going to go any further than that. And a couple weeks later, he was at Sunday Mass again, sitting in front of me and making out during Mass. So so make sure that you are on the same page in your prayer life, and start praying now. Even if you're not in a serious relationship, the person that you are going to eventually marry, you should be praying for that person now. You should be praying for wherever that person is in their life, that they don't make those kinds of mistakes, or they don't end up, not trusting their gut and going down a path that maybe they shouldn't. This is the person who's going to be the future mother or father of your children. So why wouldn't you start praying for that person today? That's a kindness that you can do for them today. Which brings us to number 6. Don't date someone thinking that they'll change. That's a big gamble that you're making with your life and your future children's lives. Also, if there's something about that person that you really want to change, that's probably a good sign that they're not really the person for you, right? And maybe that person, just the way they are, would be great for someone else. So why are you wasting your time and their time by spending time with someone that you just keep hoping, fingers crossed, will show up differently? Do them and do yourself a kindness and let them go. Either accept them at face value, and if you can't, ask yourself honestly if you can live with them the way that they are, and be honest. Okay, number 7, listen to Frankie Goes to Hollywood and just relax. Trust the process. Trust God. I think I spent a lot of time when I was single worried about whether or not I was ever going to get married. And then after I got married, I spent a lot of time worried about whether or not I was actually ever going to have children. And there's a real blessing to the time that you're in right now. And when you do get married, you're going to be married hopefully for the rest of your life, right? So enjoy where you are today, and try and appreciate it for the time. There's a reason for this time that you have right now. I remember a good priest friend saying to me, it's sort of like if you're going to have a great dinner party and you've got everything ready, but the guests aren't there yet. So just take that time to work on other things, it's sort of like making the home even better for the dinner party. Work on things to make yourself an even better future husband or wife. Number 8, be grateful. Practice gratitude every day. So there are studies that have found that practicing gratitude, even just for 5 minutes a day, can increase your level of happiness by 10%. Also, it reduces your levels of stress, it helps you to sleep better, and it makes you less likely to be depressed. And probably it's going to be something that's going to make you a more pleasant person to be around also. So practicing gratitude, I think especially in this day and age when there's so much that feels really overwhelming and negative, focusing on the things that we have in our lives that we can be really, really grateful for. Number 9, don't ask, does this person make me happy? Ask instead, can I make this person happy? It's a good habit to get into for when you're married also. And if you're not the person who can make this person happy, if you find you're kind of constantly coming up against a wall, it's probably a sign that this is not going to be a good match for marriage. And if you're looking at yourself honestly in prayer and asking that question and the answer is no, then it's time to move on. Number 10, find someone who shares your goals, values, and parenting styles. If he has big ambitions and you want to marry someone who's going to be home at 5 o'clock every day, this is probably not a good match for you. If he thinks hard work, if you guys think that hard work is what the kids really need, and she wants the kids to be able to go outside and play all the time, that might not be the best match for you. So get really clear about what are the things that you really value, what are the ways that you really want to raise your children, how you want your married life, your prayer life to look like in the future. And figure out if those things are game changers for you, if that's your bottom line, and if it's not something that you agree upon, take that seriously. Because it will just be something that's going to keep coming up again and again in your married life. Someone said to me when I was in college, the problems you have in your relationship before you're married are magnified by 1,000% after you're married. I don't know that I would necessarily say that that's true, but if you had something like that that was so significant, I think that that could be a serious concern. Okay, so now the top 10 for married people. Number 1, be more concerned with their happiness than with your own. My husband, something about my husband that not everybody knows is he's a real natural selfless giver. He's one of those people in the middle of the night when the kids were crying. In fact, we used to always say when we were first married, we would say, love is a glass of water in the middle of the night. And then we started having kids. And love became something actually much more significant. But he was the guy who he could hear the baby crying in the middle of the night and he could sleep right through it. But I would say, Ray, and he would just wake right up. And he would just be up. And he would like, what do you need? He would get up. He would take care of the babies. He would whatever, you know, this is who my husband is. And I'm very blessed to have a husband like that. I am not exactly like that in response. I don't like getting up in the middle of the night. It's really, really hard for me when I'm asleep to do something as generous and as lovely as that. So that's something that I struggle with. But one thing that I have started doing recently is I've started asking him first thing in the morning, what can I do for you today? And I've been given that advice before, like ask your spouse every day, what can I do for you today? And I always sort of felt like, oh, that seems kind of cheesy. You should just, naturally like be concerned about each other, whatever. But it's been such a blessing in our marriage, just doing that simple thing. And it's never something humongous. He doesn't, ask me to like, go get a job, make more money, or something big that I can't do in a 24-hour period. It's usually something simple, like, can you please like wash my shorts? Or can you make sure that the kids get to school on time? Or can you fill out these papers? Whatever it might be, it's a little thing that I probably would have done anyways, but it's me showing him first thing in the morning that I'm prioritizing him, that I love him, and that I see him, and that his needs are my needs and mean something to me as well. And he started doing it back, and I see how powerful it is now that he's doing it for me, and I really love it. Number 2, foster your common interests. So has anyone here ever read that book, A Severe Mercy by Sheldon Van Auken? Okay. I love that book. It's a really beautiful book. If you're a fan of C.S. Lewis, I highly recommend it. But in this book, this couple, it's sort of this conversion story, but I don't want to spoil anything, so that's all I'm going to say. But they work really hard on developing common interests. So they read all the same books, they listen to all the same records, they go to all the same art museums, they grow a love for each other's interests. So we read this book when we were first married, and I thought like, wow, that's such a beautiful idea. I totally want to do that too. So my husband really loved basketball, so I was like, fine, I'm in. I'm going to be all about basketball too. I thought it would be really fun. He liked the Lakers, so I thought, what will be fun is if I pick another team and then we can talk about it and it'll be really interesting. And my team was the Utah Jazz, and the Utah Jazz that year went up against the Lakers. So I thought, oh, this is even better. They're going to compete. We're going to watch all the same games together. It's going to be so much fun. He didn't see it that way. They made it to some kind of big final game together. I don't know exactly what that was called, but we were watching it together. And he was getting really irritated, and I couldn't understand. My team was winning. Like, that's, just how things go. One of them's going to win. And he finally just asked me, like, why do you like the Utah Jazz? Why did you pick that team of all teams? And I told him, well, Karl Malone and what was his name? John Stockton are best friends, and they opened up a used car dealership together, and I think it's so sweet, and John Stockton kind of looks like my dad. So I think that's really neat. I really like them. And he was just so disgusted. It ruined the night. So that did not work. And then he tried reading Jane Austen, who at the time was my favorite author. And I picked him up one day from work. He was reading Pride and Prejudice, and I was so excited to hear what he thought about it. And he got in the car, and he said, why? Why does it take them so long to say one thing? Like, just say, I don't like you like that. And that would be it. And I was so just crushed. So it wasn't, for us, it wasn't this beautiful, severe mercy, Sheldon Van Auken experience. But what we did find was that we both really love politics. We love politics, and we love talking about politics. We love watching the debates. We love reading different political commentators. I'm a big fan of Victor Davis Hanson. So that's a fun thing for us to talk about. We also found that we really like going for hikes together. We love doing apostolate together. So different things that we have found that we enjoy, and actually all of those things, it's funny because when I was preparing this and I was talking about this with Ray earlier today, we kind of realized, like, finally what it comes down to is we really just like talking. We really like sort of like engaging in that way. And so for us, it was finding things that we already sort of had an interest in and just growing in that and knowing, like, this is a good thing for us to continue pursuing. Not just for the thing itself, but also because it brings us closer. We started doing book clubs together, things like that. So finding the things that you're already sort of, you have in common. You are dating for a reason. Sorry, you were dating for a reason. Now I'm talking about married people. You were dating for a reason. You found something about that person that you really liked. Keep fostering that thing, especially as life gets harder and you start to have more and more outside interests. Work on the things that you have in common and grow that friendship. Work on that friendship. Feed it. Number 3, a good way to do that is date night. Make date night a priority. And I say this even to the parents of very young children. It's such a huge priority. I remember when our kids were really, really little, and it felt like 1,000 babies following me everywhere I went. And I remember talking to another mother who had older children. She had 10 kids. And I just thought, wow, how do you do this? And she told me that, she said, date night happens every week no matter what. Even if it means it's in the car, in the garage with a bottle of wine for an hour and a half. That's date night sometimes. And that's what you do. But you always honor date night. And she would tell her kids, Dad and I are going on a date. Don't interrupt us unless the house is on fire or someone's bleeding. And if the house is on fire, we'll probably smell it. And if someone's bleeding, call 911 first. But it's true, because you always want your marriage, in the end, you're not married to your children. You're married to each other. So the kids, and also a good thing that you can do for your children, if you really want to be a good mother and father, model to your children what a good marriage looks like. And a good marriage looks like a husband and wife who really love each other, because your vocation is tied intricately with each other. So number 4, know the difference between expectations and agreements. This is something we talk about a lot also in coaching for businesses. I'm always telling them, make sure that this is something that you've actually agreed on versus something that you're just expecting of the other person. And that's absolutely true also in marriage. So when we were first married, one of the things that I was so shocked and astounded by was that my husband did not believe in locking up the house at night. Like, I grew up, that is what the father did. The father would go around, my dad would go around and turn off all the lights, double check all the doors, make sure everything, the house was secure. And it felt such a little thing in a way, but it felt like he was keeping us safe. And my husband, he doesn't care about locking doors. And in fact, he doesn't care about shutting doors. So sometimes I would have friends drive by my house and say, hey, your front door is wide open and I can see you guys sitting inside and I'm just driving down your street. I would have to run, thank you so much, I'm gonna go shut the door. So he would never do this. And I had an expectation that of course this was what he was going to do. This is what a good husband and father does. They lock up the house. This is shocking. But we never created an agreement that this was what was going to happen. This was just an understanding that I had of my own based on the way that I was raised. And sometimes when you ask for an agreement with your spouse, you're going to find the thing that you want is so much more important to you than it is necessarily to them. So be open not only to when you're having these discussions and you're going from an expectation to an agreement, that you make sure that you are flexible with how that actually is going to work out. Because your way is not necessarily the right way. And we've sort of found that it brings me a lot of peace, and it's not something that's a huge priority to him. So it's not that hard for me to go around at night and make sure that the house is locked. And I'm the one who's not going to be able to sleep if I don't do it. So little things like that. Number 5, forgive and let go. Don't hold on to grudges. This is something that, for whatever reason, we get really stuck sometimes in these stories that we tell ourselves, an injustice that we perceive ourselves to have experienced. And sometimes, what does that grudge really have to do with? Sometimes, honestly, for me, I felt like he didn't realize enough how serious this was to me. I needed to really see that he was sorry. But that wasn't something that was up to me, right? That's something that's supposed to be up to him. And it wasn't even necessarily the case that my understanding of the situation was the right one. So sometimes we can be holding on to a grudge because we're so convicted that we are right. We're not even taking into account that the story that we're telling ourselves is just that. It's just a story. And there could be a completely other interpretation of the facts. So get really clear before you decide to hold on to your anger. Be really clear about what are the actual facts and what are just your opinions. So for example, I hear a lot of women complain that their husband is always late for dinner. He's always late for dinner. He's so incredibly insensitive. Okay, wait. He is late for dinner, but is he always late for dinner? That's not a fact. Right? Is he really incredibly insensitive, or is he just someone who loses track of time? There are other interpretations of those things. So when you find yourself holding on to your anger, holding on to a grudge over something, ask yourself, do I really know that this is a fact, or is this just my opinion? And the other thing I would challenge you to ask yourself in those situations is, what am I getting out of holding on to my anger right now? Because we don't hold on to things unless there's something that we get out of it. And in all honesty, there were times, especially when the kids were really little, and so much of my life felt like it was out of control, and he would be late. And he was late because he had a lot of work to do and whatever, there were reasons why, but that wasn't something that I wanted to hear. And so when he would come home and he would be late and I would get angry and I would hold on to my anger, if I really was honest about it, what I was getting out of that was I was getting a certain amount of control, right? My life felt very out of control at that time. But being able to be angry and hold that over him, that was a way that I could get control. And that wasn't something that I could very easily identify, and I wouldn't identify if I just assumed that my grudge was true and right and just. So whenever you find yourself sort of overwhelmed by emotion, whether it's anger or sadness or whatever, question it. Look for what you're actually getting out of it, okay? Number 6, know each other's temperaments. Are you guys familiar with the temperaments? Okay, awesome. Okay, well, I highly recommend, if you're not, look into the 4 temperaments, and it's actually something that's very Catholic. So the 4 temperaments were originally established by a priest, Father Conrad Hawk, I want to say. I'm not sure if you know Father. Anyways, it was originally established years and years and years ago, and it's gone through different modifications. But understanding your temperament and understanding your spouse's temperament is a great way to understand why you react differently and to have a little more patience and love and understanding for why you're reacting to a situation differently. So for me, I'm very, very sanguine. So I love being really social. There's all these, I'm a great cheerleader, I like to think that I'm funny. There's all these kinds of things that go with being sanguine that I'm really happy about. No duh, because I'm sanguine, it makes me really happy. But it also means I can go through very big highs and low lows, and I can get very anxious about things. And I remember I had just finished reading about the temperaments, and my husband and I were going somewhere, we were flying somewhere, and we were always, I don't know why, we were always inevitably running late for a flight. And I would be so panicked and stressed and angry and worried, and he would just be so calm. And then it hit me, he's a phlegmatic. Things like this don't stress him out. And it gave me so much clarity, and it actually gave me a lot of peace. Because it used to occur to me that he's not reacting like I am. What's wrong with him? But in fact, there was nothing wrong with him. His makeup is just different from mine, and that's okay. So know each other's temperaments. Know the temperaments of your children when you start having children. It can give you a lot of clarity about each other and about yourself and about the things that you need to work on as well. Number 7, let the sun go down on your anger. Have you ever heard that saying, never let the sun go down on your anger? Yeah, so we bought into that for a very long time. That is absolutely not true. Let the sun go down on your anger. Because when you are in a fight and it's late and you both have to get up early the next morning, and you know your baby gets up at 5 o'clock in the morning and he's got to get to work and work a full day, and there's no way he's going to be able to take a nap, 12 o'clock at night is not a time to try and actually have a rational conversation about something. You're going to be too tired to actually be able to figure that out. So let yourself go to bed, get a good night's rest, and revisit the issue in the morning. And I think another thing that I would add to that is sometimes when we are too overwhelmed with our emotions, I think sometimes something that's been coming up more and more lately is this idea of emotional intelligence. I think sometimes anger is a very easy emotion for us to tap into, because fear, sadness, despair, those are things that make us feel uncomfortable about ourselves. So it's a lot easier if we react instead in anger. You might have just been insulted by a coworker, or been fired by your boss, or something else awful might have. Some lady at the store might have made fun of you and your 6 children. Something awful might have happened, and you can react in anger instead of actually being able to identify the thing that is making you upset. So sometimes taking that beat, taking that moment, just to sort of recollect yourself and figure out what is the thing that's really upsetting you. And then try and be as clear as possible. Try and be as transparent as possible with each other. Transparency with each other is huge. And it's important also for yourself to understand yourself so that you can grow, which is what we really want, right? Marriage is finally for us to get each other to heaven. And we can't do that if we keep lying to ourselves and lying to each other. Number 8, pray for each other. I had this great spiritual director years and years ago who was also just a very dear friend, really funny guy also. And I was one time complaining to him about my wonderful husband and all these insensitive things that he was doing. He does this and he's that and da-da-da-da-da. And Father listened to me, and then he said, "Do you ever pray for your husband?" I realized, and I must have actually gasped, because I was so shocked when he said that. It just completely, it hadn't occurred to me to pray for him for whatever awful, embarrassing reason. And I had this look on my face of utter shock, and Father looked at me and he said, "Nice." So another thing that occurred to me recently, I've been hearing a lot of talks about guardian angels, and we should be praying for each other, but we should also tap into the person who's, the being that is your husband's or wife's best friend and knows them even better than they know themselves or that you know them. So pray not only for your spouse, but pray also to your spouse's guardian angel. And ask them to help you to know what to do in this situation, or how you can be the best spouse that you can be for each other. Number 9, be kind. We will sometimes, I find, speak to the people in our homes, in our families, in a way we would never speak to a total stranger. We can let our guards down in a way and get very comfortable, and in a lot of ways that sometimes means being not kind to the person that we say we love more than anyone. Home should be the place where you come to get rejuvenated. It can be a really difficult world out there. So we want to treat each other as if this person is the most important person in your life. And a really concrete way of doing this is responding to each other's bids. So is anybody here familiar with Dr. John Gottman? Oh, great. So Dr. John Gottman was a social scientist who specifically studied marriages and what makes marriages fail and what makes marriages thrive and succeed. And he said after years of study, he could tell in 15 minutes or less of spending time with people whether or not their marriage was going to succeed. And he had something like a 96% accuracy rate. And the thing that he identified as one of the most important things, the thing that he could tell if a marriage was going to succeed or not, was how well people responded to each other's bids. So a bid is when you are asking for the other person's attention. So when your spouse wants to talk to you about something or show you something or call your attention to something, and you're sitting there going, uh-huh, yep, sounds good, uh-huh. That's you ignoring their bid. So if your attention is half on your device, half on a book, half on the TV screen, you're not responding to their bid. And I think we've all had that experience of when someone gives you your full attention, how incredibly powerful that is. And then the reverse is also true. When you're trying to have a conversation with someone and they won't even look at you, it's very disconcerting. And especially for the person who's supposed to love you. When you come home, the person who's supposed to care about you more than anyone, if they can't even just stop what they're doing and show that you are the most important person to them, that's a huge blow to your heart and to your ego and to your relationship. There was another study, another social scientist who had it was called the 36 questions. And he said these 36 questions, he could take any two single people, and put them together. And if they asked each other these 36 questions, at the end they would fall in love. But the last element, so it was 36 questions and the last element was you would spend 2 minutes in total silence just looking into each other's eyes. And that's a really powerful experience to do that. So if you can just in a small way give that to your spouse, what a gift that would be. That's an easy way that you can start down the track of being kind for each other. And then finally, number 10, I just realized if this is a top 10, I should have done it 10 down to 1. Sorry about that. Number 10, watch the language. And I don't mean using bad words, although, whatever, you should probably not use bad words. But watch the language that you use to yourself and to each other. There's a great coaching book called The 3 Laws of Performance, and the second law is occurrences rise out of the language that we use. So the language that you use starts to create a mindset for yourself and for the people around you on how you regard the things that you're doing and the relationships that you're in. So if you use a lot of language like, I have to make dinner, you need to go take care of the kids, we have to go to your mother's this weekend. If you're using a lot of have to, need to, I can't think right now, other negative kind of language, anything like that where the intention sounds more, whether it's intentional or not, where the thought behind it is more one of burden and obligation rather than something that is a gift, that starts to affect your mindset, and it starts to affect their mindset as well. Years ago, I'm going to date myself right now. Have any of you ever heard of Dr. Laura Schlesinger? Oh, that's so sad. Okay, so Dr. Laura was a radio psychiatrist, and people would call in and they'd ask her questions about problems that they were having, blah, blah, blah. And a lot of it was, spouses calling, complaining about their spouse or about children or whatever. And one day she read aloud a letter that she had gotten from a widow. And this woman wrote in and she was saying, I get it. I hear these girls complaining about their spouses. And I know that feeling. My husband left his socks out every day, drove me nuts. And I would ask him, pick up your socks. And he would never pick up his socks. Or he would do it for a couple of days, and then he would forget again, and he would leave his socks out again. And it would drive me crazy. And I'm listening to this thinking, yeah, I totally get that. And then she said, my husband died 2 years ago, and I miss him every day. And I would give anything to have his socks on the ground again to pick up. So think about that when you think, I have to take care of my kids. There are a lot of people out there who would love to have kids. I have to make dinner because my husband's on his way home. There are a lot of people who would love the opportunity and a home that they got to make a dinner for someone else. I have to go to work because I've got to make money to provide for the old ball and chain. There are a lot of people who don't have anyone to come home to that would love to have the situation that you have. So, and again, this is all something I think that goes back to being grateful. So in your own thoughts and in your own words to each other, treat each other with that love, and remember, there will be a time when you will wish that you could have those socks on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nicole. It was almost, I just felt like I was like in a coffee shop with you, just sharing, a beverage, and thank you just for the warm way about you and your wisdom that really comes from real life experiences.
Oh, thank you.
I'm really grateful to have you with us. We'll open it up now to questions. If there's anything you'd like to hear more about, and Daniel, looks like you have one right away.
So, God willing, I'd like to have a big family. Who knows, but that's what I like. In your experience and just people around you, how did you maneuver the whole way of husband working, mom not